Secret Societies with Warhamster Brady. We apologize for our break, but we're glad to be back with you today. How are you doing, Brady?
About as well as can be expected, and it is good to be back. I have missed these shows, and I've heard all the comments, and I'm flattered that everybody's anxious for us to start back in, because we got a lot more stuff to hit. We just went through what our roadmap's going to be over the next few months, and it's going to be a busy schedule and a lot of fun stuff.
Yep, I agree.
For those who don't know, my apologies. Most of the recent absences are my fault. I decided to fracture my hip on Thanksgiving Eve and spent a week in a hospital, got a hip replacement surgery, and I'm learning how to walk all over again. Fortunately, I'm younger and probably healthier than most people to get this surgery, so it should come back 100%. But I have been absolutely crippled.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm glad you're doing better.
Yeah, the hardest part right now is sitting at this desk because I'm sitting at that 90-degree angle. So I can get about an hour in before I got to get up and stretch. So that should be perfect for today's show.
Okay.
And if you see me start sweating or crying in pain, we'll just cut it off quickly.
Okay. I won't torture you.
What do you want to talk about?
The agenda is yours.
All right. Well, we are still on Scroll and Key. It's part of our Secret Societies meets Operation Gladio, and how the world is really run, despite what they tell us, that we're in a quote-unquote democracy. Nothing could be further from the truth unless you use the proper definition of democracy, in which case it really is, and that's not a good thing. But I don't want to digress on that one. When last we left off with Scroll and Key, it's one of the three major secret societies at Yale University. Skull and Bones being the first and probably most prominent. Scroll and Key started out more academic, but as we've demonstrated, as we've gone through the 1880s through the 1920s, the Scroll and Key members have a tendency to be up to some very similar shenanigans as Skull and Bones. And really the description of that is, it's not just a fraternal organization. Many members, they are really part of a secret society where they make sure that their brethren are elevated to the most important positions in our government, industry, diplomacy, education, you name it. And these people are the gatekeepers or pushing the buttons of who's in power everywhere. And it's over and over and over again, the same pattern. You can't deny it.
Patterns are important.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a really obvious one today. And yeah, I won't even say it. You'll tell me what it is when I get there. So, without further ado, let's jump into some more 1920s alumni of Scroll and Key. And I'm going to see if I remember how to share my screen. There it is. Okay, this is our famous Miro board. These are Scroll and Key members from the 1920s. We had a Rockefeller in there. The famous Benjamin Spock was last episode. And we finished with a guy named Huntington Ting Sheldon. The next person I want to talk about, and I'm doing this in chronological order, is a gentleman by the name of Newbold Morris. Not exactly a household name. So why do we care about Newbold?
The non-household names are the ones that scared me the most.
Yeah. Sometimes, when you get a Rockefeller right there in the middle of it, you start to say, okay, this is legit. But then you get these names that, why are they worth mentioning? So, Mr. Newbold Morris. He was a Scroll and Key alumni, tapped, going into his senior year in 1925. Was born in New York City in 1902 to very old money. Where have we heard that before? You remember one of the famous Gilded Age cottages called Brookhurst?
Yes.
Yeah, that's one in Massachusetts. That's his mom built that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's actually the first $1 million house, and it's considered the last of the Gilded Age cottages. And I love that they call it cottages, because the big air quotes there.
That's what they called them on Jekyll Island, too. Those were cottages, and they're mansions.
Yeah. Yeah, the cottages on Jekyll Island. When I first read G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, I got a kick out of it. because like one of the cottages had 17 bathrooms.
Yeah.
A little hunting lodge. So yeah, we talk about old money, blue blood. That there's a reason. These guys get into all that. They go to the private schools, private high schools, the boarding schools, the grooming schools. They go to Yale. They go into the secret society. And then from there, depending on what the world events are, they basically get to fill leading roles. And yet we're supposed to be told that we are a meritocracy. So Newbold, his great-grandmother, is actually, that's how far back they go, is the older sister of a woman who is known by historians as the Mrs. Astor.
Ooh.
Yeah, the queen of New York society. So this guy's, would you say he's highborn enough to be on our list?
Yes, definitely.
Where do you think he went to high school?
One of the boarding schools.
Yeah, he's a Groton guy. He's a Groton school. Yeah.
Of course.
Goes to law school. Works for a famous, shall we say, dubious mayor by the name of LaGuardia.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, this guy's deep in New York politics, really deep. And next week we'll go a little deeper into it, but I wanted to bring this guy up because he's involved in some of the stuff that's coming. Runs for mayor in 1945 and 49. He works as a alderman for what's called the Silk Stocking District. And that's got a little bit of an interesting connotation for those who understand New York history. I'm not going to go deep into that today, but Silk Stocking has there's a reason they called it that. He didn't get to be mayor. 1952 is why he's interesting. A lot of corruption. 52 is also right when the McCarthy hearings are going on. America's trying to form a conscience. Media is not being very helpful. There's a lot of corruption going on throughout the entire Department of Justice. And he gets appointed to be the special assistant to the Attorney General, a guy by the name of McGrath, for an investigation into corruption of the DOJ.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So what he does is he distributes a questionnaire to all the senior justice officials and he wanted unlimited access to all of McGrath's personal records, the guy who appointed him. So picture this. We got a good lawyer. Sorry, that's an oxymoron or whatever they call it, but assume there's such thing as a good, honest lawyer. And you want to go in there and investigate corruption at the U.S. Department of Justice. And you're going to ask people like Mary McCord and and all of the law firm people, can you please fill out this questionnaire? And by the way, I need to see all the personnel records. What do you think is going to happen to you?
You're going to get fired.
Yeah, 63 days after being appointed, he's gone.
We want you to look over there, not over here.
Exactly. And he was fired by McGrath himself. And what's funny is just 3 days later, Truman fires McGrath. So we never got to the bottom of that corruption, and here we are 75 years later.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's why I thought this guy's story is worth telling. He'd end up becoming the New York City Parks Commissioner under Mayor Rat Wagner in 1960. So keep that little factoid in mind next episode, because we are going to talk a little bit more about New York City mayoral corruption.
Okay.
Just remember Mr. Newbold Morris.
Okay.
Okay. Pretty fun entrant, isn't he? Next guy we have is, John Hay Whitney. Now, we briefly mentioned Whitney when we did Skull and Bones. We'll go a little deeper into him. The reason we mentioned him previously is the Whitney family is one of the oldest blue blood moneys in all of America. And it goes back to Eli Whitney, Whitney Blake Jr., the Whitney family business. We'll get to that. The Bonesmen, Skull and Bonesmen that were Whitneys, we had a William Collins Whitney, and he was known for being a co-founder of Freeport McMoran, Pan American Airlines, Minute Maid OJ. Any connections there?
Yeah, lots.
He was also the Secretary of the Navy, who brought in steel steamships. What else do we have? Well, the Whitneys, a ton of them before I get into the John Hay. He's got a Brigadier General, James Scully Whitney. John Whitney of London was settled in Waterton, Massachusetts, 1635. So these guys are the OGs. He's got a brother named Henry Melville Whitney, who started the Metropolitan Steamship Company. Oh, you know that one.
Yeah.
Henry Melville is also the founder of Dominion and Steel Company, Iron and Steel Company. There's a Susan Collins Whitney, who married Skull and Bonesman Henry Dimmock, who we know. Who else do we have the Whitneys? Eli Whitney Blake Jr., 1857. Just a ton of Whitneys going on. Let's see if I got anything else worth mentioning. Oh, yeah, Henry Payne Whitney, who married Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney.
Right.
So starting to see the pattern here with the Whitneys.
Yeah.
He's got another sister, a Pauline Payne Whitney, who married Almeric Hugh. He was the first Baron of Queensborough, Dollar Princesses.
Yep.
So one of the things the Colonel and I are going to be doing when we finish up with some of these American secret societies, we're going to jump over the pond and talk about the Fabian Socialists. And a big part of that is what we've talked about before, the Dollar Princesses. Those are where these old titled British names who've run out of money trying to upkeep their estates marry American heirs, daughters usually, so they can have the money to go with the titles. And along with the Dollar Princesses came a lot of these Fabian ideas came to America. Okay, let me just finish up this quick Whitney review. There was a William Payne Whitney who invested in things like banking, tobacco, railroads, mining, etc. And then we get the family, William Payne Whitney, who was Skull and Bones, 1898, married a woman named Helen Julia Hay. See the John Hay Whitney? That's where that comes from. Helen Julia Hay was the daughter of the U.S. Secretary of State from 1898 to 1905, John Hay. So what do we say about these people are always all over our diplomacy? They pretty much run it.
And what was going on during that period of time?
Oh, I thought you might pick up on that. Boy, I don't know, maybe the Spanish-American War, annexation of Hawaii.
All done by these people.
Yeah. And if they're not the Secretary of the State, they're the Assistant Secretary of State, or they're an ambassador.
Correct.
All right. Oh, and by the way, there's a William Payne, there's another daughter that John Hay Whitney's related to, and that was Joan Whitney Payson, who was famous for being the first owner of the New York Mets in partnership with one George Herbert Walker Jr.
Wow.
A few connections there.
A few.
Yeah. No comments yet today?
Scrolling Key marries
Skull and Bones.
Skull and Bones.
Marries British royalty. All right, so those are the connections, and that's John Hay Whitney. But he's a traitor. He becomes Scroll and Key, not Skull and Bones. So obviously he's born in 1904. Not obviously, he's born in 1904. We just discussed Payne Whitney and Helen Hay Whitney. Goes to a boarding school known as the Groton School.
That's crazy.
Yeah, all of them. There's like no exceptions to that. He's an oarsman at Yale. A lot of these people are scholar athletes. Got to give him credit for that. We had a lot of crew members. This guy's one of them. He inherits, after college, a massive fortune and becomes one of the richest people in the United States. This is the 1930s, or 1920s and 30s. In 1929, he participates in a hostile takeover of a company called Lee Higginson and Company. You may have run into Lee Higginson in your research. I don't think I've discussed them in the past, but they're worth mentioning. Lee Higginson and Company was a very old Boston Brahmin bank. Colonel, who are the Boston Brahmins?
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Do you have that poem memorized still?
No, not totally.
Yeah, it's something like that somebody's only talked to the Cabots and the Cabots only talk to the God to talk to God. And the founders of Lee Higginson, the Boston Brahmin Bank, people like the Cabots, the Lees, and of course the Roosevelt family was involved as well.
Yep.
And Whitney did a hostile takeover of this bank in 1929.
Holy crap.
Yeah. A little more on that bank. They're the ones who helped finance General Motors from day one. Now, we did talk about this briefly in the past because that bank actually fully collapsed in 1932. Do you remember the Swedish match scandal, the Ponzi scheme?
I read about it, but I don't remember the details of it.
I can go back if we have time at the end of the show, but it really was basically matches. Wooden matches were selling sort of like Dutch tulip mania. And obviously it's a Ponzi. First people in got paid, second people in did not. And that's actually how that bank, after the hostile takeover, what was left of it disappeared. The guy who helped him, John Hay Whitney, in that hostile takeover, is a guy by the name of Langborn Williams. Langborn is from Virginia, old money from Virginia. He had an interesting career outside of banking because he was a big part of something we know and love called the Marshall Plan.
Ooh.
Yeah, he helped implement that. And of course, post-World War II, he was a long-term member of an innocent little group known as the Council of Foreign Relations.
So he's one of them.
Yeah, so we got bankers that are involved in diplomacy with the Marshall Plan, and also Council of Foreign Relations, who's calling the shots at 100% calling the shots at the time for the CIA.
Yes.
Once again, it's the international banking connection.
Yep.
So probably worth mentioning, Mr. Langborn Williams. All right. Oops, gotta turn off my ringer. So there's all these people born with these silver spoons in their mouth. They're deeply involved in philanthropy, a lot of modern art, or art itself. In 1930, John Hay Whitney joins the board of directors of the famous Museum of Modern Art, which we discussed recently. And we're going to get into more when we get into foundations. But big picture, this is a Vanderbilt mostly creation where they what was considered art at the time in Europe didn't show a whole lot of appreciation for American artists. So they threw a lot of money behind the Museum of Modern Art and created a new form of art. And we had all these American, a lot of people think it's very decadent and had a lot to do with some of the demoralization of American society. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit more when we talk about the Rockefellers. But the Museum of Modern Art is a very important data point. And to show you how important it is, by 1941, Mr. John Hay Whitney, Blue Blood himself, is the president of the Museum of Modern Art. He succeeded a guy of no consequences by the name of Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller.
And we talked about that museum when we talked about the Rockefellers, because there was all kinds of scandals with the art that was displayed in there and all kinds of different things. Yeah.
Yeah, I know we touched on it previously.
Yeah.
And some of it's pretty decadent and what have you. But and I mean, we can't talk about the art without talking about the money laundering aspect of it. So I'll tee that up for you and just give a couple minutes on that if you don't mind, because I think it's a really important point.
Well, that particular museum, so, everybody talks about politics being downstream of culture, and this was the center of culture. Just as you've outlined, the Blue Bloods trying to change the culture of America. And they put some very crazy things in there. One of which was my brain's kind of hazy, but they ended up having, Nelson Rockefeller did this with his mom. they had a really weird relationship. And Nelson Rockefeller, of course, is notorious for his South America goings on, and the art piece had to be completely taken out because it created so much controversy. Even so, they're the avant-garde of pushing us towards a much more liberal culture, and they were doing it using art. Now, in addition to that, to your point, where they use art as a money laundering tool, that's huge, because they basically establish the value of art by what gets displayed in some of these different, more prestigious museums. And they will basically buy the piece of art, inflate the value of it in a way of laundering money through art museums. And it's a way of cleaning up their ill-gotten gains in the drug trafficking or weapons trafficking or human trafficking networks.
Yeah, it was used very successfully to get money out of Europe right around this time. Some Gladio operations involved. The OSS was big into that. Alan Dulles himself was brokering art in Switzerland when everyone else was fighting the war.
Yep.
Question in the chat from the Cat's Meow says, did John Hay Whitney start the Whitney Bank franchise? No, it predates him. That goes back further. It's one of his ancestors. I'll give you the exact name in a second here. But no, he was more of a philanthropist. He didn't dirty his hands with commerce too much. But that's really important. It's the money laundering aspect and everything to do with how they used art to manipulate culture. Where are we? Okay. So Whitney, it's a bit of a playboy. And he had a lot of affairs, but I thought that the one that really caught my attention was, you remember Nina Gore Vidal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John Hay Whitney has an affair with Nina Gore Vidal, while his wife at the time was having an affair with Nina Gore Vidal's husband, Eugene Vidal. So, and this is in the late 30s. So that really was scandalous.
Wow.
Yeah. So they would, of course, they paid off the newspapers and the tabloids, which we talked about. Foundations of the tabloids was another one of these scroll and key guys. All right, so 1942. John Hay Whitney obviously gets divorced from his cheating wife. Can't have her around, can you? It's a joke. He marries a woman by the name of Betsy Cushing, also known as Betsy Cushing Roosevelt Whitney, because she's the ex-wife of James Roosevelt, who is the son of Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
That family tree is very skinny.
It really is. Thankfully, they didn't have any kids, otherwise they would have been born with 3 eyes. So this little thing happens called World War II. You might have heard of it.
Yep.
Well, John Hay Whitney joins the Air Force. And guess what he does in the Air Force?
What does he do?
Well, he's an intelligence officer assigned to the OSS.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, yeah. And while he's there, he becomes good friends with a lawyer who's over there by the name of Alan Dulles.
Because of course he does.
Yes. And they became lifelong friends, by the way. Interesting story about John Hay Whitney. He's also known as Jock Whitney, by the way, because apparently he's an athlete.
Did he also go to Oxford?
I thought it was Cambridge, but it was one of the two.
Because I came across a different article, and it said that he went to Oxford, which of course doesn't surprise me at all.
Let's see. I have it down here. I did go to Oxford or Cambridge, one of the two.
Yeah, because that's kind of a grooming avenue as well. I just wanted to throw that in as you're going through that.
Oh yeah, we'll get there when we get to Fabians. We're gonna go deep into that stuff.
Yeah, I'm just tying it in for your future.
Yeah, and we're not going to go deep into the Rhodes Scholars because that would take months. But we are going to touch on it. But that'll be the first part of the Fabians, is setting the table. But here's a fun story about him in World War II. He actually got taken prisoner, and on his way to the POW camp, the transport train he's on came under Allied fire on the way to the camp, and he gets to escape.
Oh,
Uh-huh. Now, what is it that you say about the targeting of Allied bombing? They're
that
all
it was very specific.
always protecting American assets.
Yes.
Would you say John Hay Whitney qualifies as an American asset?
I would say he definitely qualifies as an American asset.
So it's probably not a coincidence that he's one of his train just got hit and he was able to escape.
Yeah, probably not.
At the time, Alan Dulles is sitting there in Switzerland matriculating with German officers, so they probably
Yes.
knew exactly which train he was going to be on,
Yes,
where to hit it, and how not to pursue.
correct.
I think that's a pretty good speculation.
Pretty good.
All right. Okay, and this goes back to the question in the chat. He gets out of World War II and he forms a company called J.H. Whitney and Company. It's a venture capital firm, not a bank. The banking family is different. But J.H. Whitney and Company is the oldest venture capital firm in the United States. What is venture capital? 30,000-foot view. Accredited investors can pool their money and make investments that are not plain vanilla. You don't just get to buy common stock or bonds in a company. You can buy leveraged debt. You can buy stuff before it goes public, which is really the way Wall Street is rigged. Is the real money gets in prior to anything going public. You build your business, then the Wall Street guys get in there and they do the underwriting process. And the two people in the world that know most about the value of the company are the owners of the company and the Wall Street bankers. And they're going to turn around and sell to the public for the highest price possible in what's called an initial public offering, an IPO. And people are going to go out there and pay top dollar for a company that's already maxed its value. And they're able to do that because they've got an army of salesmen known as stockbrokers, financial advisors, etc., to distribute these hot IPOs with the media pumping them up.
So, and this is done with private money where there's no trace of where the money comes from at the exact same time that we're setting up Gladio and taking over the opium market. Is that what you're telling me? And
Indeed.
this is the guy that was in the OSS that was part of the creation of the Gladio network in Europe. And
yeah, he invented the business model of the venture capital. I'm here to say I've worked in VC and I work with VCs. Some of the best actual good business you'll ever see.
But it's also the perfect place to launder money.
Which is exactly correct because it is not transparent.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
Kinda. And it's the first one. And it just happens to be set up in the immediate aftermath of World War II.
From the guy
who's an OSS guy?
From the guy who's best friends with Alan Dulles?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm sure there's nothing nefarious there at all.
No, that's a coinkydink. So by the 1970s, Whitney's one of the richest men in the world. He's a big backer of Republicans. Who's a huge supporter of Eisenhower.
Oh, who would be surprised by that? You mean the Eisenhower guy that was the 4-star general in Europe that set up the whole logistics for Operation Gladio with Lyman Lemonsker as his chief logistician? Yeah, that guy.
Not to mention the Marshall Plan.
The Marshall Plan with their covert initial seeding for Operation Gladio. What the hell?
This is too crazy. We should just cut this short. No one's going to believe what we're saying.
Holy crap. Okay, go on.
He's, of course, a member of the New York Young Republican Club.
Oh, good God.
And we could do a deep dive into that one of these days. Funny thing about Eisenhower, and I don't know, it's a fun little factoid for historians, he could have run for president as a Democrat or a Republican and won. And both parties recruited him. And it was the big money, old money Republicans from New York, like Whitney, are the ones who talked Eisenhower into running as a Republican.
Yep.
And favors like that usually get favors for a service like that, don't you think?
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So he gets appointed the ambassador to a small little country of no import called the United Kingdom from 1957 to 1961.
Holy crap. What?
Yeah, he's the U.S. ambassador to England.
And for those of you who don't know, that's like the cat's meow of all ambassadors, because that's how you come up with Russiagate, and all of the nefarious things between MI6 and the CIA. This guy is one of the players in that network.
You want to know
Holy
who?
shit.
You want to know who he succeeded? The guy who had that office before him?
Who?
A guy by the name of Winthrop Aldrich.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Uncle to Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller.
Yeah.
Grandson of Senator Aldrich, who set up the meeting on Jekyll Island that created the Federal Reserve Bank.
Wow.
Yeah. So from 57 to 61, what's going on? We actually had the relationship between England and the United States were a little bit frayed because of the Suez Canal crisis that had just happened. And Whitney's over there kind of smoothing things over and really improved relations. Why is the Suez Canal such a big deal in the scope of Gladio?
Yeah. Obviously, the control of the flow of goods, Suez Canal being Egypt, and where the British had set up the Muslim Brotherhood way back when. So all of this, yes, all of this comes into play here.
And this innocent-looking guy, John Hay Whitney, is in the middle of all of it.
That's crazy.
Yeah. What else do we have about him? Oh, yeah, he would then purchase the New York Herald Tribune. Big supporter of a New York mayor by the name of John Lindsay. Remember these New York mayor names because we're going to hit on this more next week. He's a skilled polo player. And of course, he raises thoroughbred racehorses, and he had Kentucky Derby winners, you name it. This is one of the biggest stables for thoroughbreds in the world, one of the most successful. To this day, I believe there's still subsidiaries that are still winning big races.
The Lindsay guy?
What's that, Whitney?
Or Whitney?
Yeah, this is Whitney still.
Okay, and so the importance of the whole thoroughbred racing is its interplay with the mafia, just so that you guys know that.
Yeah, we touched on that when I talked a little bit about the history of the Del Mar Race Club, which, the Del Mar track, which is basically spitting distance from where I spent most of my life.
Yeah, you can't have racing without the mafia.
No, you can't. He would finance Hollywood. Ever heard of a movie called Gone with the Wind?
Yeah.
Yeah, Whitney paid for that.
So let's see. He's into money laundering. He's into the mafia stuff. He's an intelligence guy. He buys media. Yeah, and like none of that would be a continuation of his intelligence operations post World War II.
Which all started with his banking background.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Scroll and Key.
Yep.
Oh,
so he's one of the biggest art philanthropists in the world. He's got an amazing collection, and I went through a list of all the paintings that he owned. And I'm no art historian or anything like that, but the names I recognize that he owned: Monet, he had Degas, Manet's, M-A-N-E-T. There's two of them, Monet and Manet. Seurat, Rousseau, Picasso, Van Gogh. He owned all of those. Like some of the most famous paintings in the world were sitting in this guy's galleries. And that's so important because at these social events, you get the who's who. We've talked about this for months, when we've talked about Newport, Rhode Island and all that. The men will go off into the smoky rooms at the end of these events, and that's how they plot, everything from the Council of Foreign Relations. It's just world events. This is where it's done.
yes.
It's through these social circles.
Yes.
And when you've got an art collection like that, I guarantee you're getting invited to every single meeting.
Yep.
Whitney dies.
They're probably hosting a lot of those meetings.
Indeed. He's on board. He's on boards of it. Everything. It's all right. That's about it for him. But pretty boring guy. Dies in 1982.
And a name we don't even really know, and it's connected to so much stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah. Let's skip to Paul Mellon. Here he is with horses. Gee, I wonder why. Paul Mellon, scroll and key. Born in 1907 in a place called Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
What pops into your head when we say Pittsburgh?
Nefarious crap. I mean, obviously that's where Carnegie Mellon University is, and you have all of the stuff that we've talked about in the past, between the Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and New York City is this entire apparatus of influential people.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. I mean, we've had a lot of Pittsburgh show up. It's one of those.
Steel, all of that stuff.
Big time. So Mellon is born in 1907 in Pittsburgh. He's an heir to the Mellon banking fortune, which was founded by his grandfather, Thomas Mellon, in the 1800s. Running the bank when he was born was his father, Andrew Mellon, and his uncle, Richard Mellon. Andrew's not that important. He's just the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury from 1921 through 1932. Did anything happen in that time period when it comes to our monetary history?
Like everything bad?
Yeah, we had the Roaring '20s, where they're pumping liquidity at anything that moves. Stock market's booming, everything's booming, and all of a sudden you get the orchestrated crash of 1929, which we've talked about. But he's still there till 1932 when FDR comes in, and so that's Andrew with Mellon Bank. And by the way, Mellon Bank came out of the Great Depression pretty strong.
Of course it did. Not like they didn't know it was coming.
And he's in college. Paul Mellon, our hero today, is in college when this is going on. His mother was a woman by the name of Nora McMullen, and she's an heir to Hereford Castle in England.
Ooh.
That's
interesting.
Yeah, a little dollar princess connection there.
Yeah.
In reverse this time, though. Okay, so let's talk about the Mellons. 1957, Fortune magazine, owned by whom? Let's see. I know we know who did Fortune. It wasn't Loose, but it was one of them. Give me 1 second. I'm going to find that. Nope, it was Henry Luce. I was right the first time.
Mr. CIA front.
So Henry Luce creates Fortune magazine. They created their first list of the wealthiest people in America. In the top 8 of the wealthiest Americans in 1957 was Paul Mellon, his sister Ailsa, and their cousins Sarah and Richard. They had 4 of the top 8 richest people in America from this one freaking family.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Another couple Mellon Bank names we've talked about before was a guy by the name of Henry Clay Frick. Frick was one of the robber barons, business partner and supplier and banker to a guy by the name of, Carnegie. Frick and Mellon together created something called Union Steel. Now put your Gladio glasses and tell me these next 2 companies that Mellon created if they ring a bell. Alcoa.
Oh, aluminum.
Mm-hmm. And do they have any interest in South America and Central America?
A lot.
Mm-hmm. Everyone talks about it was all about United Fruit and all that stuff down there. No. It was all the resources.
Well, Alcoa is the one that did the whole fluoride in the water thing too. And where was the research done? In Pittsburgh. By the Mellons.
Was that at Carnegie Mellon, or had that been invented yet?
I don't know that it was Carnegie Mellon, but the university that they created was part of the research that did the study that supposedly found their hazardous waste from their aluminum was beneficial to teeth, and paid the almost $1 million at the time to a guy that was embedded in the government to endorse fluoride being added to toothpaste and eventually into the water system, all so that they didn't have to pay for the disposal of the hazardous waste called fluoride. That's these people.
And then, I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on it as well, because obviously we know that we've had a lot of theories out there, that fluoride makes you much more susceptible to brainwashing and suggestive thoughts like social engineering and MK Ultra and that kind of stuff. So
one of the proven health risk is the thyroid contamination and the coating of what a lot of people refer to as your third eye. And that definitely allows you to be more easily convinced of things in a psychological operation or propaganda campaign.
Congratulations on living in Florida, where Ron DeSantis has recently signed a bill getting fluoride out of the water. Very first state to do so. Congrats.
Yep.
We filter everything. This is filtered water. You notice the lack of my giant water mug?
Yeah.
I can't get up the stairs with it, so I'm using this plastic thing. So
I was actually part of that effort.
Good.
I did a presentation. I did when I was part of the Moms for Liberty. I did a finding, signed it, sent it off to all the congressmen and to the governor's office of the long history. It was like a 4-page fact-finding research project to explain the whole in the Alcoa and their, I think it was in Colorado where their mine was, that the whole disaster there where the teeth of the kids were all turning brown. And just like with the Manhattan Project, they decided to equally distribute the mess so that that particular population couldn't be noticeable. So if we just poison everybody, it's fine.
There's more to that story. We're going to have to get to it one of these years. That's a pretty darn deep dive. All right. Oh, here's another company they founded. Ever heard of Gulf Oil?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a Mellon company. Why do we know Gulf Oil? Well, all of the above reasons.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about Paul. He went to a boarding school.
Was it Groton?
No, he actually went to the Choate School, the Choate Rosemary Hall, one of our other top 5.
Okay.
So he's a Choate guy. Goes to Yale, and then Cambridge. He goes to Cambridge because his father just happens to be the U.S. ambassador to the Court of St. James from 1932 to 1933. That would be the British ambassador. Small world, huh?
Yeah.
So Paul comes back to Pittsburgh and goes to work for Mellon Bank. I assume he just did banking type things, nothing of note, until 1940, when he joins the U.S. Army. And he asks to join the cavalry. He's a horse guy. That makes sense, right?
Right.
Somehow he serves in a position with a group called the Morale Operations Branch of the OSS.
Okay.
You detecting a pattern yet?
Well, I know what the morale branch was about. Psychological operations.
Yeah, I'm going to read some quotes on that.
Okay.
Straight out of their handbook. But the pattern, of course, is that all these scroll and key guys happen to be OSS, like every single damn one of them. They're businessmen that go to the OSS, which is the predecessor to the CIA, when these businessmen go back and sit on the board of the CFR, which probably gives most of the orders to the CIA.
Correct.
All right, so what is the MOB? The Morale Operations Branch. It's worse than it sounds, of course, and they use what's called psychological warfare. out of their own handbook, it says it is propaganda to produce, in quotes, specific psychological reactions in both the general population and military forces of Axis powers.
That's crazy.
Created by Columbia University's Wild Bill Donovan, of course, the founder of the OSS, to mirror Nazi propaganda, which he admired how effective it was. Now, they got a couple of funny, without going too deep in the MOB, there's a couple of their operations that Mellon was directly involved in. And one of them is called Scorpion West. Have you run into that?
No.
Okay. So after the German defeat at Normandy, the Germans are spreading leaflets around, their soldiers and the populace of places they're occupying. And it's supposed to be, it's positive, we're going to still winning the war, don't worry. So they decide to counter it in the MOB, and they send out 3 different leaflets in German. And one of them is to encourage the soldiers to hold the line and go scorched earth. A second orders all the soldiers to shoot any officers who retreat or surrender. And a third of these leaflets, different version, orders the soldiers to carry out evacuation of civilian populations by force. So you can imagine, if you're on the front lines of Germany getting all these different leaflets and the civilians are seeing the same thing, are they going to force us to leave? Are they going to shoot us and go scorched earth? It's causing confusion all over the place. It was effective.
Yep.
Another one of the operations that Mellon's involved in is called Operation Hemlock. This was what they call a poison letter campaign, where they sent anonymous letters to Gestapo officers that are implicating German officers of disloyalty. And if the stories about the Gestapo are even close to being true, you can imagine how many innocent, loyal Nazi officers who are just serving their darn country got hung up by the Gestapo based on these fake letters.
And what's interesting about this, given what I just said about the whole fluoride campaign, is he learned how to do this in the OSS.
Indeed. And they learned it from the Brits.
Yeah.
Let's see. He comes home after the war and basically just a philanthropist and breeder of thoroughbreds, which is why you see this picture of him. A lot of his money went to Yale, art, of course, the Episcopalian Church, and Cambridge University. Mellon is now in the National Museum of Racing Hall of Fame. Interesting little side note. His second wife is a Rachel Lambert Lloyd, who's a descendant of Listerine's founder, Warner Lambert. Warner Lambert merged with another company, and you all know it today as Pfizer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's Paul Mellon.
Wow.
We got time for one more.
Okay.
Benjamin Brewster Jennings. He's a pretty interesting guy. Bear with me. It's going to take me 1 second to pull this up. Remember the Brewster name because that's old founding Mayflower type name. And we have talked about them before. And we mentioned Benjamin Brewster was a financier. He's a guy that worked with Oliver Bird Jennings and the California Gold Rush. We talked about that.
Right.
That was Brewster. Jennings is a guy who married the sister of William Rockefeller's wife. He got involved with J.D. Rockefeller and Standard Oil Company. That's where the Brewster money came from. Did a bunch of railroad stuff. But this gentleman, Benjamin Brewster Jennings, is worth mentioning. He was class of 1929, Scroll and Key, He would go on to become the president of the Socony Vacuum Company, which, of course, became Standard Oil Company of New York, which then became
Yes.
Mobil. That's where this comes from. He was born to Oliver Gould Jennings and Mary Dowse Brewster.
And didn't Mobil Oil become Exxon?
Yes, indeed.
And that's the company that refused to participate in the new concession in Venezuela when Chevron did.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
it's coming full circle right now, all this stuff.
Okay.
All right, so Benjamin Brewster Jennings, known as Brewster Jennings, goes to St. Paul's School in Concord, New Hampshire.
Because of course he did.
Serves in World War I as in the U.S. Navy as on a submarine chaser. He did not work in intel for some reason, although one could argue that they relied on.
Yeah, the submarines were highly classified type missions anyway. So,
what else is there about Jennings worth mentioning? He's big in the United States Maritime Commission. Vice President in charge of Transportation Division of the American Petroleum Institute. And of course, he's a trustee of the Sloan Kettering Institute for Cancer Research. We mentioned him briefly previously.
So that's interesting. They know that fluoride is going to cause cancer and they're involved in. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Well, that's all I had on Benjamin Brewster. He's worth mentioning because he's in the same class. I'm going to actually stop there on them because we get to the 1930s, and there's some really fun ones coming up. Like I said, I promised some stuff on New York City. And I think we can get through the Scroll and Key and maybe 2 more episodes. Might be quick. Might be 1. But because Timothy Mellon is down there in the 1960s, obviously a descendant. But there's some really interesting names that are more recent, and we may spend a little bit of time on 1 or 2 of them.
Okay.
So.
Sounds awesome.
But, let's see. We're supposed to tell them what we're going to tell them, and then tell them what we told them. So what did we discover today?
That everything's connected.
Yeah, in more ways. And I'm glad we did Scroll and Key, because as much as Skull and Bones tells a story well enough, this goes deeper and brings in some loose ends.
And I think it illustrates that it isn't just one. It's proliferated across all of this.
Yeah, it's a network. It is a network.
Yes.
And it's not. Yeah, and it's not done, in well-lit conference rooms. It's done in smoky rooms and back halls where you got to be a private member to be part of the conversation.
And what's interesting about this is you see these people up here at the international syndicate level. They delve into the Praetorian Guard intelligence operation and seamlessly transition back into the syndicate. So they have shaped the intelligence Praetorian Guard temporarily at its birth. And then, because basically the whole thought process is all of these people in the 1700s, as we've talked about, they hired their own intelligence and paramilitary people. And during World War II specifically, they transition out of their little hierarchy into the formation of the permanent military state and the permanent intelligence state, and then recede back into the syndicate, having laid the egg that is now going to be working for them, and they control this Praetorian Guard. And I think Skull and Bones and Scroll and Key articulate this probably better than any other entity that we could have picked to illustrate just how cohesive this monster works.
Yeah, and they're certainly not exclusive. I mean, outsiders can come in and join the club. Absolutely. You don't have to go to Yale to be part of this whole network. But I think it probably helps quite a bit.
I definitely think it's higher on the pecking order.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you obviously, you've got the right bloodline, went to the right schools, or in the right club, the right social circles. You join the Army, Next thing you know, you're not out there doing drills, with some guy from Cleveland. You're basically tapped on the shoulder and say, hey, why don't you become the aide to this OSS guy?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's really how it works.
Yes.
And even if the guy you work for, officer, is just straight shooter, not part of the whole thing, well, you're the choke point. You are the conduit to where he gets his information, and we discovered that early on.
Correct. They're the gatekeepers.
That's my term. Yeah, that is the term.
Yeah. Well, that was an exciting entree back into getting in our weekly groove. So thank you for that, War Hamster.
Well, thank you. No, it's good to be back in the saddle, and hopefully I don't fall off the horse again anytime soon.
Move to Florida.
Working on that. I've got a knockdown drag out slugfest tonight with the HOA, and it's going to be either they join me in hiring an attorney to go against one unit owner, or I get to hire that attorney and sue the whole HOA. And I'm right.
I would not want to be in a legal battle with Brady ever.
I got one of the great compliments. My father-in-law, he's an attorney. Worked for Massachusetts Attorney General. He's a pretty respected attorney, and after reading some of the letters I've written to the HOA, he looks at me. He goes, "You wasted your life. You should have been an attorney." Well,
no, you did not waste your life, because I don't want that stink on you.
Which brings up, before we go, a really interesting thing we talked about before the show is a lot of these mega law firms that we've been detailing throughout this series, they're all merging. Cadwalader announced a merger today, and a lot of that has to do with artificial intelligence. And we're going to see a lot more M&A. I don't know what that's going to do for legal fees, but if I'm like a 30-something guy trying to start my own law firm, or if I'm a legal aid working for a big firm, there's going to be a lot of change in the legal world coming up because of AI. And,
gosh, could we have less lawyers?
Oh boy, I think that's the future. But
yeah,
and I saw an interesting graph on I think it was on X, but something like the people that score over like 180 on the LSAT, something like 80% of them are white males. Yet the people who are named as judges during the 200 judges named under Biden, 33% of them were white males. Once again, it's DEI, it's affirmative action, and we are dumbing, deliberately, instead of being a meritocracy, we're dumbing people. And I feel so bad. I really do feel bad for the millennials and Gen Z, because the white males of those generations were absolutely discriminated against. The doors were closed, and I feel I complained about what a raw deal Gen X got, and these guys have it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
I do feel bad about that, and I think. I'm not all for reparations, stuff like that, but hopefully we can deport enough people that the doors open themselves up, real estate prices stabilize, all that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
all of it ties into this big picture. It's all part of the same plot, and that's to demoralize a population for the sake of one globalist new world order. Psychological
operations.
You got it.
Change the culture. We just talked about all of that. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Definitely we'll be looking forward to the next few weeks as we close up Scroll and Key and move across the pond. Any last words, Brady?
Yeah, it's good to see everyone again. Enjoy the chat. We'll have to talk offline about what we're doing with the holidays, whether we can sneak a show in next week or not.
Okay.
I'll be out at Cape Cod, but I may have time. We'll see.
Okay.
If not, if I don't see you guys before that, have a Merry Christmas and hopefully a Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks for joining us.